We just wrapped up the conversation with Will, but he is going to record a video tour of his studio. This is a bonus for those of you watching on YouTube, and I hope you enjoy it. So here is Will's studio, Chill House Studios.
Great.
All right, Will, good to see you again. You sent us a video. This is a tour of your studio, and we're just going to hit play and kind of walk through it. I'm going to have some questions, of course, as we go. So let's give it a shot. Let's start. I'm going to turn the volume down because it's mostly you just walking through the room.
Yes.
So your little telephone here, is this something you made or something you purchased?
So that telephone was on the wall in my house in the 80s. That's the receiver part of it. And I was at my parents' house, some years back, and it was hanging out in my dad's workshop. So I said, "Are you doing anything with that?" He said, "No, I don't even know why I had it." But I took the that half of it and made it into a microphone.
Ah,
So
interesting.
it dates back to my childhood, actually.
Um, Studer A800, right?
80, A80,
880.
A80, yes.
Oh, A80, right? Not 8.
08. It doesn't have the extra zero. It's like what, 1985, something like that.
Right. How often does that get used?
Okay, so it gets used less than it once did. It's sort of a curve that's gone downhill over time. I used to use it quite a bit. Now I probably do 6 or 8 sessions a year on it.
Yeah. Okay, and moving over here to your desk. Um, Interesting. So these are Neumann O310s, is that right?
These are the KH2. I think they're the two. No, the 350As. They're not the digital ones.
Okay, okay. So these are the Neumann brand, right?
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah, these are about 5, 6, 8 something years old. 320 KH320A, I believe, is the model number on them.
Okay.
Um,
Um, so I used to have the predecessor to this before Neumann, who is owned by Sennheiser.
yes,
They bought a company called Klein and Hummel, and I had
yes,
the Klein and Hummel versions of these for a
yep.
period of time. I found they were fantastic monitors. I had them in my studio in San Francisco, but when I moved everything home, when I closed that studio, I found them to be too big for the room that I was in, and I ultimately ended up selling them to 25th Street Recording in Oakland, California. And they sound so much better in a bigger room.
I love them. I really love them. I don't know if I got this in the shop. I'm running a sub with them, which you can't see because it's under the desk.
Yep.
I don't know if I got this in the shop, but I also have soffit mounted Westlakes overhead that are truly big. BVSM12s, I think, three-way. But yeah, I don't know
Yep.
if I
Those are in the
panned up.
shot. I don't recall seeing
Yeah, I
those.
might not have panned up to the ceiling that they're right overhead of where I'm sitting. But anyway, I love those Neumanns. When I was doing a speaker upgrade or change or whatever, I tried 3 or 4 different brands, and just those things. As soon as I put them in place, I knew that we were gonna get along. So
Yeah.
I,
So is this Yamaha board, is that an O2R96?
it's a DM2000, so it's the next one up from that. And it's a little older. Well, it's definitely a little older. It's probably 20 years old, but I have it configured in a way that I really, really like. I've got it configured as a 32 input, 24 bus board because I'm running all this outboard for mixing,
Mhm.
and I need a lot of ins and outs, and also I have the tape deck, so I need a lot of ins. Um, but it is a DM2000 that we bought years ago when we were doing all those Pixies gigs. And yeah, I've kept it running, and I know there's all kinds of different things out there today, but I know it really well, and it works for my workflow.
Okay. Um, is that a Drummer 1960 in the top left?
1969 Mercenary Edition. We were friends with Fletcher back in the day, so I
Uh-huh.
have his drummer 1969, and right under that's his Great River MP2NV, the mercenary one.
What's this monitor down here on the floor?
Okay, so back in the early part of 2024, I finally got a Mac Studio, like the little M2 box. And I was running the whole studio on a 2012, which you can still see in that picture under the desk, a 2012 tower, which I loved, and I loved it because it's modular. You can take anything out of it and put anything in it. And I had 4 drives. It still runs. So, um, but I got to the point where you just couldn't bring it any further with OS. It was stuck on Mojave, and I was falling further behind. So since I made that switch, I had used that computer for it's 2012, 11 years or something. I still have tons of stuff on it. So that's the monitor for the other computer, because I still have to go into that and fish out things as necessary. So it's kind of silly. I tried to put a switcher on the monitor, the main monitor, but you can't switch between the Mac Studio and that computer. It's a whole thing. I bought stuff. It didn't work. Anyway.
Interesting. Okay, so moving forward,
Yes.
excuse me. This drum set, I can't quite
Yes.
read the logo. What kind of kit is that?
Okay, so that's a 1969 Ludwig Standard,
Okay.
and I love that kit very, very much. I had a partner sort of guy who had a 67 super classic, which I fell in love with. It's also sometimes called the Ringo kit. And when he left and he took that kit, and I tried to buy it, but that's my replacement for it. It's a 69. So the 69 Ludwig I track all the time, and it does kind of the classic vintage kind of thing. And then the one you're looking at now is around 2002 DW custom kit, which is a more modern sounding kit.
Yeah. But nice to have the choice between the two.
Right. So I have about 7 or 8 drum sets. When we go in the basement, you'll see a bunch of them in a rack. But these two lately seem to be, either I have the two that I'm using, either for the more vintagey stuff or the more modern stuff.
Okay. And fairly commonplace to keep some of the most often used mics out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So there's my 87. That's a 1976 U87. Then over in the corner is a Bee's Knees Arabella, which is sort of his sort of U47 slash maybe M62. I don't know. I forget, but it's a U47 kind of clone sort of thing. That's a Advanced Audio 87, sort of much less expensive version. There's my SM7 I'm talking to you on now.
Wait,
I think
how are you doing?
Exactly. I put it back in there.
Interesting. Okay. And you're using the hearback system.
Yes, sir.
The 8-channel hearback system. That seems to have taken the place of a lot of those older Furman 4 or 6-channel units.
It's been great. I think they don't sell this particular model anymore, but you can I've sent the satellite boxes back and had them refurbished. I think they do them for like $100 a box. I've had a few kind of studio partner guys over the years, and one of the guys, and when they, we do our thing, and when they leave, I end up buying some of their stuff, and that hearback system was one of those things that one of my prior partners had in here, and I bought, and then I bought a bunch of extra boxes off eBay and had a lot of them refurbished.
Okay, yeah, we don't see the Westlakes up above. Yeah. We'll take your word for it that they're there.
Oh yeah, maybe I should do another video. I didn't get those. I didn't get the Whirly either. There's a Wurlitzer on that one wall, 200A.
So tell us, this is a B3 and Hammond organ. So what's the model number here?
So that's a C2. That's a 1951 C2 Hammond with a 1964 Leslie 122R. The 2 series predates the B series. The 3 series. I think the 3s started in like 54. It's a C instead of a B. The Bs have legs on them, and the Cs have the wraparound cabinet. And the difference is that a B3 and a C3, or a B2 and a C2, they're exactly the same organ, all the insides and everything, but they were originally designed for churches. And so the 2s had the cabinetry so that when the church organist was up on stage at church, you couldn't see her legs. from the audience. That's why
Right.
they
And
built
there's
that.
there's a built-in speaker on this, is there not?
No, that's the A100s. That one doesn't have the built-in speaker. A100s have the built-in speaker, so you have to have some sort of speaker. I bought it from a guy. I actually bought it from a church organist, an older guy, and he had because Hammond didn't sell Leslie's. They had a big falling out, and
Yeah.
so they sold the tone cabinet, which was this giant like 8 by 12 cabinet, but it didn't have it didn't have any movement to it. So I got the Leslie separately.
Yeah, we used to have an A100 at my studio in San Francisco, and I also had heard that, excuse me, the two manufacturers, the two principals of the companies did not like each other.
Right. They didn't get along. I think Hammond sued him a bunch of times over the years.
Uh,
But
back of the oh no, this is the front of the no back of the building.
no, that's the front. So that's the street. You walk in off the street through that door, and you're standing in the front airlock. There's an airlock in the front, an airlock in the back, and then the control room and the live room you were just in are both floated. So you can see how thick the wall is there. It's a double
Yeah.
thick wall with double thick doors.
Well, so I guess the bonus here is being that that's the front. When somebody pulls up and they load their gear in, they just load right into the
Yeah,
live room.
right. It's very convenient. And the purpose of the airlock is for sound control because you can be standing on the sidewalk literally right outside that door, and somebody can be where that guy is right there. And somebody can be in there playing drums, and if I have those doors shut, you don't hear it.
Okay, so here's something that puzzled the living hell out of me.
Okay, go.
Okay, so I saw this and immediately I saw the spiral staircase, and my
Yeah,
first thought was, wait a minute, how did he get the piano down there?
totally. It was built in. We put it in and then put the floor in. So it's not coming out unless you take a piece of the floor out. There is a hatch that I'm standing on right now. If you back up, you can see those handles for it. There's a trap door there you can pop if you go back just a little bit. And you can pass gear down into the basement. Right.
Oh, right
Yeah,
there.
right there. So there's a handle on the left bottom corner. So you pop up that whole floor comes open and then you can hand gear down. So all the other stuff, that's how it gets there, but the piano does not move.
Okay, let's see. A little extra storage there. And I know,
Yeah, that's the baskets full of percussion toys.
can
Yep.
you have people in here recording?
You can. It's just super, super, super reverberant because as you can see, it has really tall ceilings and it's just drywall. There's no dampening in there. So it's a very reverberant, really reverberant room. So it works great as you asked before about it, like a chamber. You can crack that front door with like the drums going on and you can really hear the reverberance in there.
Yeah. So for everybody watching, there's a point in our interview, which is a separate video, uh, where Will and I are talking about using that front area as a live chamber. So you can hear part of that conversation on.
Sometimes if I have a really full session, I'll put the Leslie out there, but I put a big blanket over it because it's just so reverby.
Yeah. Okay. This is vibey, and I noticed in the microphone on the phone that you were using to capture this, like everything got really quiet.
Oh yeah, okay, because I have made this room so dead and just there are layers of insulation and stuff that you can't see behind those walls. Because I put bands down there and I don't want any reverberance down there so
Yeah.
that I can multi-track like a rock band down there for a video.
A few more drum kits.
Yep.
You are loved.
No, we did I co-wrote a song called You Were Loved during the pandemic and we made a video down there and that was part of the props. I kept
Okay,
it.
question. You didn't actually go into here. What's back here?
So it's the same thing as the front of the building, but on the back. It's a spiral staircase that goes up into an identical airlock on the back, although it has lower ceilings because the roof is sloping as the building goes back. So it's the same exact deal, just in the back.
And then I noticed you have a PA set up down here.
Yep. So you can rehearse down there, but when I do video, if it's got a singer that they'll use the PA and I'll take a split off that microphone.
Is this a little air conditioner?
It's just a dehumidifier.
Oh,
Probably should have
dehumidifier. Okay.
probably should have moved that. It is a basement.
Yeah.
In the summer, in the winter, it's fine. In the summer, I run that.
Okay.
68 super reverb, Vox AC30.
Oh, right here.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the 68's killer. Love that amp.
Okay.
That's an old DeVille, one of those hot rod. Those things are ubiquitous.
I can't read that. What is that?
That is a 1968 Fender Super Reverb
Okay.
410.
What kind of piano is this?
It is a 1973 Yamaha G3 7-foot grand,
Okay.
and I keep it in tune. I keep it serviced. I'm buddies with the guys that are in the tech department, piano tech department at Berkeley, and they one of those. They're like three of those dudes that'll come out and tune it. It gets tuned regularly.
Are these homemade right here?
Okay, yeah, those are homemade gobos. So when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden, we couldn't do anything anymore. So I built those for upstairs and the plexiglass. So the whole reasoning behind that was I made them with that really tall plexiglass so that I could kind of subdivide that upstairs room
Mm-hmm.
and so I could, when the pandemic was happening, of course, when it was the height of the pandemic, I didn't have anybody, nobody went anywhere. I didn't have anybody in, but in those moments where it eased and you were allowed to kind of be around other people with masking and all that kind of stuff, I built those so that I could subdivide that room upstairs and I could have somebody in the ISO booth. I could have a couple people in the live room with that thing right there, kind of dividing them. And then I could be in the control room and you could have a session with like two or three people or one or two people. Now I'm using it as like a little ISO gobo-ish thing in the basement. Especially if I have like a jazz band, I'll stick an upright bass in there.
You know what always blows me away on some of those HGTV shows is if you want to get rid of these poles and you want to put a beam in here, like an I beam to support the top, it is insanely expensive.
Yeah, it's holding the floor up, so I just painted one of them black so it wouldn't show up as much in the video. Because usually when we do video, that carpet that's in your bottom left hand corner, that's the drums are sitting there, like
Okay.
facing towards the piano.
Okay.
So you get that pole gets a lot of camera time because the band is.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. That's structural. Like I wouldn't want to move that.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, let's move along here.
So the high gain amps on the left, you can see my orange, my EVH, my Marshall.
Right here.
Yeah, the
Actually, let me go.
orange and the EVH are in that little gobo room right now. Yeah. So like if I have a band upstairs, I'll have all that stuff downstairs so that it's isolated. I'll have the players upstairs with the drums and with the band, but the amps will be in the basement. So I was doing a session last week where I had that rig running and I also had the super reverb running, and so I just had this in the little room, so it had a little bit of isolation from the super.
I love the burlap here.
Yeah, my wife got a whole bunch of coffee bags for a project she was doing. Actually, she covered our dining room chairs with them when our children were smaller and made a mess all over the place. So I grabbed some and made gobos out of those. Those are pallets, and I stuffed them full of insulation.
Oh, that's great. So these are pallets, and then what is that? 1 inch plexiglass?
Yeah, so I mean it's thinner than that. So originally I made gobos. I made three of them. But then like I said, when the pandemic hit, it's like a restaurant sneeze guard. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Over the salad bar. So when the pandemic hit, it was sort of important to try to isolate people. Whatever those rules were, 6 feet, all that stuff. So I put those giant plexiglass things. I mounted them on top of the gobos so that you could see. You could have people in a room, they could see each other, but you had the sneeze guard. But yeah, it's thin plexiglass. It's like, I don't know, man. It's a 1/4 inch thick or something, maybe 3/8.
Okay. And then is this another dehumidifier right here on the left?
It is. It's a basement. There's that one permanently drains into a collection thing over in the corner. But I've really got it down to where I only need one of them in the summer.
Okay.
It's really not bad. It's a very dry basement. Just it gets the smell. But the nice thing about the basement is it never gets above a certain temperature in the summer, and it never gets below a certain temperature in the winter. So the piano likes it.
Yeah. And then
Big old
obviously you're
refrigerator.
recording in this area.
So that's the big refrigerator, 810 Ampeg base cab. You'll notice the head. I have an SVT head that's not on top of it. But yes, when I'm doing like a rock band, I'll have that's where the bass cab will sit. The guitar amps will be in the room we just came out of, but I keep the bass head. If you back up just a little bit, there it is. So I
Here.
usually run the bass head not on top of the bass, and the reason for that, not on top of the bass cabinet, and the reason for that is that it wants to rattle itself apart. Basically, it wants to rattle its own solder joints apart because the thing's so loud and huge. So if it's a video or something like that, I'll put obviously the head will go on top of the cab. But for most recording, I keep the head in a different room than the cab. Also, that particular model has a fan, and a ventilation fan that's kind of loud. Honestly,
All right.
that's got my 414s are on there.
All right. So just kind of a run through as we talk. Um, where do you buy your carpets?
Man, they've just come over time. I don't think I've ever bought any of them. Um,
Funny how one can acquire those kind of carpets.
they just yeah, exactly.
Or
So
throw rugs.
totally like Persian-ish kind of rugs. Like I said, when we bought this place, it was all gray carpets and all white walls, and that just seemed really clinical to me. So the first thing we got busy doing was putting in a somewhat interesting paint scheme, and then we just always had rugs. I mean, I think if you're in studios, rugs are kind of the deal, right?
They kind of,
Fun.
yeah. Jim Scott, his studio in Southern California seems to be covered in them.
Yeah, they're good for dampening. I mean, I know where they all came from. Like the one that's on the bottom there came from my wife's family. The one that's on top of that, the organ's sitting on, was my last kind of partner guy. It came out of his studio, and then when he moved on, he just left it with me. He had several rugs because he had a studio with a concrete floor. That plaid one I've had since I was in college. That was in a house I lived in.
Huh? What about
Um,
these diffusers? Where have you picked up these diffusers
so
from?
those are made out of like a plastic kind of material. It's not plastic. It's like a polystyrene. It's hard poly kind of material. You can buy them. You just buy them pre-made. They're not like the ones that people make out of wood.
Right.
So obviously in studios, parallel surfaces, flat surfaces are, you know, not your friend. So that's trying to help with that situation. But you'll notice the walls are all mixed medium. I should have shot the ceiling, but I didn't. The ceiling is sloped back. It has a bunch of facets. It's not flat.
Uh-huh.
Same in this room.
Okay.
There's a lot of facets, but you can't, obviously in building, sometimes in a building, you can't avoid a flat surface.
And to the left is the Italian restaurant, or was that to the right?
Yeah, I should have gone outside and looked at it from the front. So yeah, if you walk out that front door and make a left, there's a little cafe, Italian cafe right next door. If you make a right, there's a convenience store. My block, there's like an Italian restaurant, a dog washing place, a convenience store, me, an Italian restaurant, an insurance company, a Domino's pizza, another convenience store that sells beer. Um,
Well, you got all
just
your
all,
basics.
you got everything you need
You
right in
can
your
go
block.
next door and get an espresso or some Italian food, but you could still get beer and you could still get
Yeah,
pizza.
exactly. So it's all right here.
Excellent. Did you put that spiral staircase in?
No, that was put in when so the building the main build out for this was done in the early 90s. And they did that
Okay.
and they poured the cement floor in the basement.
Okay.
So but yeah, it's interesting to have they make sense because they save so much space. If you have an actual staircase, it takes up a lot more space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this studio, when it was first built, they weren't using the basement, and then I put a bunch of effort into making the basement usable because it kind of doubles my
Oh my
square
gosh.
footage.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine not using the basement.
Right.
So much extra square footage and in this case, place to put the piano and extra drum kits and just expand a band's footprint.
Exactly, and it's all still soundproof, and I don't make anybody mad by making noise down there.
And also just, a little bit of extra storage. Is it a challenge to try to not accumulate so much because you've got space to put it in?
It is, and I've always had a everything is getting used. If something is sitting around unused, it moves on. Every piece of gear that's in my racks is used. If it's not useful, it needs to go. And that's kind of the same with all this stuff down there. Every single bit of it is used. And if it's not, like you said, I don't have a lot of extra storage space, and neither do I at my house. So I try to keep things not as uncluttered as possible.
How often do people call you and say, "Hey, I got a free piano or an extra drum set.
Yeah,
You want it?"
I do turn down stuff. I have a guy right now who's older than you and I are, who has some amazing vintage amps,
Hmm.
especially, and he's got some pedals and stuff. So we met and talked. So I'm thinking about that, but he has a lot of stuff. But he's got a storage unit full of stuff. But out of all that stuff, there are like 10 things. He has a '58 Bassman. He's got a early '70s Plexi Marshall. He's got a whole bunch of like Silvertones and Premiers and those funky tube amps from the '50s and '60s. He's got two Blackface black panel twin reverbs. So he's got some nice stuff. And I'm sort of thinking about that, like figuring out and he just needs somewhere to put it because he's leaving his storage space. So anyway, yes, it does happen, and people leave stuff here. They do. There are a few things here are not mine. They're just kind of on long-term loan or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think probably most studios have that.
Well, thank you for giving us a tour of your studio. That's great to see that. And for those that are watching who have watched this first and haven't heard our interview, please go back and check our interview out here on the channel. And that's it. So, hey, Will, thanks, man. That's great to see it and great to see you again. And yeah, you take care.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and thanks for letting me show you around.
All right. Thank you.